Sobek in a cramped, airless chamber where the stone wall's heat seemed to draw moisture from the chilly dawn. The heavy, persistent scent of Nile mud invaded your nostrils, tangled with the rustic aroma of dried herbs you needed to prepare. Your rough, time-worn fabric itched against your skin as you rose slowly. Today, as a priest of Sobek, the crocodile god, your routine was cruelly unyielding. The morning ritual demanded you refresh the altars with the river's essence, dipping your hands into a viscous, cold mixture, while distant chants drifted, carried on the warm wind slipping through the half-open door. You polished bronze statues, feeling their uneven texture beneath your palms, before guiding offerings with precise, repeated motions that seemed endless. Journeying to the temple meant living alongside the ever-present dread of crocodiles, creatures both revered and feared, whose looming presence made simple tasks feel like silent sentences. Every morning balanced devotion with survival, and you knew death might lurk just around the river's bend. The stone against your bare forearm was cool and uneven, grains coarse and sharp, as though etched by the river itself. You inhaled deeply, the thick scent of mud and herbs blending with the faint salt of the river air. Outside, a sliver of pale light slipped beneath the door, mingling with the hushed rush of water. If today's stress over a low phone battery felt relentless, imagine the crushing pressure of a crocodile, waiting just steps away, silent and patient. Your fingers, stiff yet familiar with the ritual, traced the contours of bronze statues. Each stroke was slow, deliberate, the metal's pitted surface rough where the river's touch had eroded its shine. The repeated motion brought a quiet rhythm, a near meditative calm amid the oppressive heat. The scent of dried papyrus and earth settled softly around you as the distant chant continued its endless cycle, a lullaby to gods and mortals alike. Your breath slowed, matching the cadence of your work, steady and unhurried. Outside, the temple loomed, a shadowed silhouette against the morning sky, its massive pillars wrapped in creeping vines and dust. Your footsteps echoed quietly on the stone floor as you moved carefully, alert to every slight sound. The river's edge was near, and with it, the ever-present threat of unseen jaws beneath tranquil waters. A sudden silence sliced through the distant chanting. The wind stilled abruptly. Your heartbeat quickened, the rough fabric of your garment rasping at your neck. From beyond the door, a shadow flickered, and the faintest creak suggested a presence watching. The river's murmur dimmed, replaced by the weight of an unseen gaze, patient, relentless, inevitable. E, antes que Morfeu te pegue de vez, dá uma conferida rápida se você continua inscrito. Para alguns, o botão sumiu e eu não quero que você perca as próximas histórias para dormir. Aproveita e deixa um like macio como um travesseiro. Me conta nos comentários de onde você nos ouve e que horas são aí. Sua interação mantém este cantinho de calma vivo. Valeu por fazer parte. You stepped outside onto the temple's worn stone steps, the early light casting long, wavering shadows that stretched like silent sentinels beside you. The air was thick, not just with heat, but with a heavy quiet that pressed against your chest as you moved forward. Every breath drew in the mingled scents of wet earth and decaying leaves, the river's presence alive and waiting just beyond sight. Your sandals scraped against the rough surface, rhythm slow and measured. Each movement forced to be deliberate, careful, the barest shift of weight promising to betray you. Somewhere beneath the water, beneath that endless, tranquil surface, vague shapes stirred. The crocodiles, their cold jaws, patient and unhurried, loomed in your thoughts as you pressed onward toward the sacred basin. The temple's carved pillars, worn by years of wind and river mist, held faint traces of ancient colors, dull ochres and faded lapis blues, that caught soft gleams in the dawning light. You reached out, fingers grazing the cool stone, feeling the tiny grooves etched by countless hands, each mark a whisper of devotion, a trace of caution left by those before you. At the basin, the water's surface was still, mirror-like, but heavy, almost clutching at your reflection with an unseen weight. You lowered your hands into the viscous mixture with the slow inevitability of a rising tide. The coldness bit gently against your skin, a shock you welcomed, grounding you to the stark reality of your duty. Your fingertips traced circles in the river's essence, the liquid thick and clinging as it ran between your fingers. The scent of river mud carried sharp and earthy, twisting with hints of wet papyrus stalks and a faint undertone of something deeper, something ancient that hummed at the edges of your awareness. You paused, breath shallow. Somewhere, far beyond your field of vision, the muted chant resumed, a rhythm distant and unchanging. The wind whispered through the open temple door, carrying it in waves, the voices of unseen priests tugging at your consciousness. Raising your hands, you began the slow, precise motions to anoint the bronze statues. Each movement drew out minutes, the endless repetition of rubbing, polishing, and offering a ritual balm against the oppressive quiet. Your skin felt the uneven metal beneath your palms, the worn edges, the pockmarks where time and river had danced their slow, relentless tango. The statues loomed large in your mind, emblems of power and respect, and yet beneath the surface, you felt their stony, watchful unease. You knelt beside the altar, the rough fabric of your garment rustling with the subtle scraping of stone. The heat clung to your skin, pressing like an unfinished weight you couldn't shake. Your breathing lengthened, slow and methodical, matching the rhythm of your hands as you traced the halcyon lines of the temple's great crocodile carvings. You allowed your fingertips to explore each detail, the sharp scales, the ridged tail curving gently into the stone. It felt like reaching into an ancient story, a warning locked just beneath generations of worship. Outside, the sudden shift was palpable. The air tightened again, the breeze stilled, as if the world was holding its breath. That familiar sound, the barely audible creak from the temple doorway, returned. Your heart quickened beneath ribs heavy with anticipation. The river's distant roar faded, swallowed by something deeper and more deliberate lurking in silence. Shadows stretched and shifted at the edge of your vision, fragments of movement caught from the corner of your gaze. You rose slowly, muscles taut beneath your worn linen robes. Every step toward the door was measured to avoid the slight stones that might grind noisily against the floor. The sun's touch grew warmer, the golden light weaving layers of quiet comfort across the temple walls, chasing away some of the lingering coldness of night. But beneath that warmth, a taut tension threaded through the air, wrapping tight around the edges of your senses. Outside, the river beckoned, its dark surface flashing faint reflections of the morning sky, disturbed only by the occasional ripple. You inhaled deeply, tasting the mingled tastes of salt and mud, the elusive, briny tang that marked the boundary between safety and death. The scent of crushed reeds filled your nostrils, damp and growing faint as a breeze ruffled the vines climbing the temple walls. Somewhere close, a bird's high call pierced the stillness, its sharpness momentarily slicing through the heavy blanket of anticipation. You stepped beyond the threshold, the temple door moaning softly on ancient hinges. The air outside was different, wider, yet sharp with hidden dangers. Your bare forearms brushed against the rough bark of a nearby date palm, sticky resin clinging to your skin like an unwelcome reminder. Eyes shifted, always watching. The silent knowledge that beneath these waters, the crocodiles waited, creatures at once sacred and merciless. Your gaze slipped along the shore, catching glints of scales in the dappled sunlight. A flash too quick, a shadow too deliberate. You moved with slow precision, feet sinking slightly into the wet soil, the faint squelching sound a constant companion. The river sighed, folding itself into the land with calm menace, as if breathing secrets only it could hold. The ritual of offerings awaited. The broken pottery, the small piles of herbs, the twisted shapes of carved wood. Each piece balanced carefully on the temple's edge, a fragile barrier between the world you controlled and the one you only survived. Your hands trembled slightly as you reached out, the cool weight of the offerings grounding you, even as a whisper of unease curled in your stomach. Time stretched thin. Every breath, every heartbeat felt amplified, echoing endlessly in the quiet. You felt a presence lingering just beyond the river's shimmer, awaiting patience colder than the looming crocodile's jaws. The wind shifted, carrying with it a silent, unmistakable promise. And then, as your fingers brushed against the last offering, a sudden movement caught the corner of your eye, sharp and unnatural, too deliberate to be the whim of sunlight or shadow. Your breath stalled, lips pressing together as the heavy stillness of the riverbank closed in behind you. You freeze as the sudden ripple in the river's mirror surface draws your gaze, sharp and insistent, like a whispered warning from the depths. A dark silhouette slips beneath the water with silent grace, a shadow that pulls at the edges of your awareness, refusing to be ignored. The air tightens, pressing against your skin as if the river itself holds its breath alongside you. You feel the pulse of something ancient, slow and patient, gnawing at the quiet like a hidden current beneath the placid surface. Your hands linger involuntarily over the final offering, the cool weight grounding you in this fragile moment. The broken pottery's jagged edge presses faintly into your palm. Rough and real, anchoring you amid the rising tide of tension. The scent of crushed reeds swells in the air, mingling with the sharper bite of mud and salt, sharpening your senses. You inhale deeply, trying to stretch your focus thin enough to touch each sensation, the slick humidity on your skin, the brittle rustle of drying leaves, the distant call of a bird that quivers with tentative hope. Your ankles shift cautiously, the damp earth sucking softly at your sandals. A subtle grip, threatening to betray your slow progress. Beneath your feet, the soaked soil feels alive, whispered vibrations pulsing faintly through the riverbank, echoing off the stone temple walls with a muted pulse. Your breath lengthens, steady but shallow, matching your steps in a deliberate cadence of attention and quiet defiance. You glance back to the temple's threshold, where shadows clung like reluctant spectators to the worn stone, their presence heavy but unmoving. The sun's warmth cascades slowly over the ancient carvings, burning ochres and faded blues, trembling with dusty particles that drift like tiny phantoms caught in a long-forgotten dance. Your fingers itch to trace the worn edges again, to reaffirm the cold solidity beneath a world that feels fragile and charged. The river draws you closer, its surface now marred by a subtle trail of bubbles that vanish before they break the endless surface. Your heart nudges you forward, trembling but resolute, every footfall measured with unyielding care. The crocodile's scent, earthy, stale, and inexplicably full of promise, hangs faintly in the air, an oppressive veil that both anchors and isolates. You press a hand to the carved crocodile by the altar, feeling the ridges beneath your skin, worn smooth yet harsh, as if the stone itself breathed a quiet warning. You lower the offerings carefully into the dark water, barely disturbing its heavy stillness. The herbs float softly, tendrils unfurling with subtle reluctance as the mud beneath stirs quietly, a slow sigh from the riverbed. Your gaze fixes on the water's shifting surface, watching shadows dance just beneath the gentle ripple, a choreography whispered only to those who watch long enough. Time slows, measured and pulsing, the chant from the temple a distant, almost forgotten lullaby. You kneel again, the rough fabric scraping softly against weathered stone, and your fingers return to the bronze statues. The cool metal is a harsh contrast to the warmth thickening the air around you. Every deliberate circle and rub a lifeline against the creeping unease. Each small act of reverence draws out threads of calm, fragile and brittle like dried papyrus underfoot. A faint sound ruffles the silence, a slow scrape from beyond the reeds, barely piercing the weight of stillness. Your breath falters, heart tightening in response, as a shadow fragments beyond the temple's edge. The air shimmers almost imperceptibly, thick with a silent threat, folded inside patient waiting. Muscles taut, you rise slowly, knees creaking softly beneath you, every movement steeped in caution. The river's dark surface reflects the sky, now streaked with pale cloud, a subtle dance of light and shadow, mesmerizing enough to distract from the lurking dangers. A sudden breeze rustles through the vines, tugging at the fabric of your robe and carrying the heavy scent of mud and crushed herbs. Your skin prickles as the invisible gaze settles, cold and immovable, watchful then far too close. You step onto the stone path leading away from the river, the rough texture biting against your bare feet, each pebble pressing sharply like a reminder of the fine line between safety and oblivion. The distant murmuring of the temple chants resumes, lingering low and steady, a whisper threading through the quiet ether. You falter for a moment, fingers brushing against a broken reed lying near your sandals, its brittle husk scratching gently. As you move, the river sighs darkly behind you, whispering secrets in a language of endless currents and patient hunger. The crocodiles wait, their presence woven into every heartbeat, every careful breath. The sun climbs slowly, casting long shadows that stretch across the walls like fading promises. Your eyes catch a flicker of movement far upstream, too swift to be a bird, too deliberate to be light playing tricks. You stop, breath caught, senses straining against the thickening stillness. The air grows heavier, the quiet deeper, as if the earth itself holds back a secret it is almost ready to reveal. A sudden ripple fractures the mirrored surface again, sharper and more insistent this time. Your heartbeat hammers loudly, echoing beneath ribs tense with anticipation. Hands trembling, you reach out instinctively, but the weight of unseen eyes pins you in place, locked in a moment suspended between dread and uncertain hope. Then, from the shadows just beyond the water's edge, a shape emerges, slow, deliberate, and unmistakably deliberate, its gaze dark and unblinking. Your breath catches, the world narrowing to the silent space between you and a presence that has waited long enough to choose its moment. The river's cold caress seems to pull at your skin, a final invitation whispered just before the silence tightens once more. You stand frozen by the water's edge, the gentle swelling of the river mirrored in the tightness curling deep into your chest. The ripple you saw moments ago refuses to disappear, lingering like a faint tremor in the reflection. The air, thick and still, presses against your skin with the subtle weight of unseen eyes, eyes that watch with a patience sharpened by centuries. Your breath catches, shallow and hesitant, a fragile thread binding you to this suspended moment. Around you, the temple seems to hold its silence tight. The vines twisting around stone pillars shudder only slightly in the faintest stirring of a breeze, carrying with it the sharp, bitter scent of crushed reeds. The cold mud, dark and stubborn beneath your feet, clings with a slow reluctance, as if reluctant to relinquish its grip. The vivid warmth of the sun climbs higher, washing over cracked pottery and scattered herbs like a whispered apology, offering a brief ease against the river's patient menace. You shift your weight, the soft scrape of your sandal against stone, breaking the long tension. Your gaze flickers back to the basin, where the water's surface has settled into a deceptive calm. But beneath, the shifting shadows remain, darker shapes just beyond the edges of your vision, reminding you of invisible teeth and indifferent hunger. The scent of wet earth fills your nostrils again, layered behind the sharp herbal aroma, grounding you even as your pulse drums a deeper rhythm of watchful waiting. Your fingertips trail slowly once more over the bronze crocodile figures, tracing the worn scales carved with ancient reverence. The metal is cool, uneven, alive beneath your skin in a way that the temple stones are not, imbued with the weight of worship and fear. Each deliberate motion is a tether to this ritual, a whispered promise in the silence. Your breath subconsciously slows, matching the lazy, steady cadence of your careful hands. As you kneel by the altar, the rough fabric of your robe rustles softly against the stone, the texture rough but familiar, a comfort amidst the tight coil of unease tightening in your stomach. The distant murmur of chanting resumes, thin but steady, threading through the calm like a fragile lifeline. Outside, stirring birds lift their voices tentatively, breaking through the suffocating quiet with sharp, ringing cries that momentarily slice the oppressive atmosphere. Your eyes linger on the offerings, small and precise, fragments of broken pottery, dry bundles of herbs placed by weary hands. You reach out with slow care, the cool weight resting against your palm, grounding you. Yet your senses remain heightened. There is a silent balancing act between devotion and survival, held on the sharp edge of patient danger. The river, with all its ancient mystery and menace, breathes quietly all around you. A soft rustle from the reeds pricks alertness from the edges of your awareness. A sound barely louder than the sighing water, a gentle counterpoint to the distant chant. Your heart quickens at the subtle shift in the air, the way the stillness thins, as if the world itself pauses to watch and wait. Your muscles coil with quiet tension as shadows lengthen against the temple walls. Every sense drinks in the fragile dance of light and sound, aware that the delicate balance could tip at any moment. You place the offerings carefully into the river with the slow assurance of ritual, the herbs floating reluctantly, stirring faint wisps of mud that cloud the water briefly before settling again. Your eyes never stray far from the dark surface, watching the play of shadow and light, the faint whisper of movement beneath the ripples. Each passing second stretches, an eternity held in a breath between the calm and something waiting, patient and unyielding. The sun's warmth gradually presses deeper into your skin, a thin comfort against the persistent tension that weaves. Through the heavy air, you rise steadily, feeling the scraped stone beneath your feet, through the thin sandals, rough and steady like a tether back to the earth. The chant fades softly, swallowed by the river's own slow rhythm, and a silence heavier than before settles in. Your gaze darts once more to the far bank, where a flutter of movement catches the dimming light. Quick, deliberate, unreadable, a cold current snakes through your body as you tighten your grip on the stone nearby. The uneven surface rough against your palm, firm and grounding. Around you, the temple's ancient carvings breathe a quiet warning without words, like guardians watching over a fragile moment suspended on the edge of certainty and dread. You pause, breath held tight, muscles taut. The river slips silently beside you, its dark face broken only by a sudden, sharp ripple that catches you unprepared. You meet the water's shifting gaze, the silent promise of what lies beneath, the slow, inevitable approach of something ancient, waiting to reveal itself in its own time. The moment coils tighter, shrinking the space around you to a whisper, to the faintest vibration in the heavy air. And then the quiet breaks. Something moves just beyond the tendrils of reeds, no longer hidden by shadow or light. A shape emerges, slowly, deliberately, breaking the surface with a weight carried through countless dawns. Your breath catches, heart pounding in hollow chords beneath ribs that tighten with raw anticipation. The air falters, as if the very fabric of the temple's ancient stones holds its breath alongside you. That dark gaze fixes on yours, unblinking, patient. The river pulls at your skin with a cold, endless caress, a reminder that some stories, no matter how long waited, begin only when silence is shattered. You stand motionless, the weight of the river's gaze upon your shoulders, cool and inexorable. Across the water, the faint shimmer of scales disappears beneath the surface, like a secret drawing back into shadows. The air holds its breath with you, the thick scent of mud and crushed reeds pressing close, as if the very earth were leaning in to listen. Your heart beats steady, but hollow, a muted drum beneath ribs taut with the heavy silence. Slowly, you pull your gaze from the restless water and shift it downward, feeling the rough stone beneath your bare feet, uneven and cracked, like the history pressed into the temple itself. A lazy breeze stirs, teasing the curled edges of your robe, carrying threads of dry earth woven tightly with the scent of distant firewood. You inhale, letting the fragrance seep into your lungs, grounding you even as the cold whisper of the river lingers at the edges of your senses. Your hands, still tingling from the cool embrace of the muddy offering, brush against the carved crocodile at the altar's edge. The stone beneath your fingertips is worn smooth in patches, ridged and rough in others, a tactile memory of relentless worship and fear. You sense the slow passage of time in those grooves, the weight of centuries folding into the present moment. Your fingers trace the rows of jagged scales, each one a silent chant in its own right, before your touch drifts to the sharp angles of the crocodile's stern jaw, frozen forever in stone. Around you, the temple breathes softly with the hum of early morning life. The faint rustling of vines pulling at the pillars, the cautious stir of small creatures hidden far above in the high, sun-warmed branches. Somewhere nearby, the distant cry of a bird slices the quiet like a fading arrow, a solitary note that fractures and lingers. Your steps echo faintly as you move back toward the basin, each one deliberate, careful, as if the earth beneath your feet might ripple and betray, spilling your secret into the brittle air. The basin's surface mirrors the waning light, still almost too perfect in its calm, like a thin skin stretched taut over deeper, restless waters. You lower your hands again, slipping them slowly into the viscous mixture, feeling the cold cling to your skin with stubborn tenacity. The smell rises sharply, earthy mud, slimy moss, and the faint, almost imperceptible pulse of drowned papyrus leaves. Your fingers circle gently, disturbing the liquid with barely a flicker of movement. The river's ancient memory seems to stir beneath, invisible but palpable, a breath held just beyond reach. With painstaking slowness, you fold fresh bundles of herbs into the water, the dry leaves hushing softly as they sink and scatter. Each motion echoes in your mind, the subtle splash, the gentle caress of water over skin, as if every small act anchors you deeper into this fragile balance between devotion and the looming presence beneath the surface. The air thickens, the humid weight settling like a blanket, that presses you firmly into the moment. You kneel once more, letting your fingertips brush over the bronze statues dotted along the altar's rim. The metal is cool and indifferent, its worn faces catching the last silver thread of morning light. Tiny imperfections, pits, and ridges reveal stories no one dares speak aloud. Whispers of worship mingled with silent warning. The rhythm of your hands, tracing circles, grows slow and steady, a quiet mantra repeated in the stillness, each breath drawing you closer to calm. And yet, beneath it all, the taut thread of unseen danger remains. Your eyes flicker toward the riverbank again, catching a flicker of movement caught between shadow and dawn. A ripple disturbs the water's gleam, breaking the fragile surface with hesitant insistence. Your breath stalls, the smooth stone you clutch growing suddenly heavy beneath your palm, the textured roughness grounding you even as unease curls. A slow vine through your chest. The scent of the river shifts, mingling subtle salt and musk, filling the air with an undercurrent far older than the waking day. You can almost feel the weight of waiting eyes beneath the water, the unchanging presence of steady, endless patience. The sun climbs higher, the golden light thickening around you, washing the ancient stones in warmth and dust. Still, the pause in the air grows tauter. The river's whispered threat threading through the suspended breath of morning. You rise slowly, careful not to break the delicate spell binding the temple. Each movement is measured, footfall quiet as it brushes against worn stone and fallen leaves. The wind stirs again, lifting a loose curl of fabric, as if the world itself nudges you forward and back, drawn into a dance of tension and release. Ahead, the path curves away from the river's edge, winding into shadows where thick vines coil and ancient trees loom. Your glance lingers there, where darkness gathers beneath folded leaves, and the faint outline of something too still to be merely a shadow. The river murmurs behind you, low and constant, a heartbeat threaded with endless hunger. You sense the delicate moment fraying at the edges, the invisible boundary between now and what waits just beyond sight. Your fingers close loosely around a fragment of pottery left near the altar, rough, chipped, an echo of fragile human care, and you press it tightly, grounding yourself in the imperfect certainty of stone and earth. From deeper within the shaded thicket, a subtle motion draws your eyes once more, slow, deliberate, and too precise to be chance. The shape begins to resolve, emerging from the half-light like a breath held too long, ancient and patient. Your pulse quickens, the air thick with the quiet promise of unveiling, as the dark form rises inch by inch, breaking water and shadow together. Your breath catches, time halting in trembling stillness, suspended between the calm past and the unfolding now. The presence meets your gaze at last, unblinking, its silent patience palpable as the river pulls at the edges of your awareness, and the world tilts toward what must come next. You stand motionless by the river's edge, the pulse of the water beneath your skin, a fragile tether to the moment. The dark gaze you met seconds before still lingers like smoke curling close, unblinking, patient, as ancient as the stones pressed. Deep into the temple floor, that ripple repeats, a subtle tremor in the perfect mirror of the water, refusing to settle into stillness. You feel the weight of silence pressing around you, thick and nearly suffocating. The air tastes heavy with mud and crushed reeds, a dampness that seeps into the folds of your robe, sticking like a second skin. Your bare feet root into the cooled stone path, rough and splintered beneath your sandals. The worn surface shifts slightly beneath each deliberate step, reminding you with a muted grind how fragile your careful balance truly is. The sun climbs steadily, heating your skin until beads of sweat dampen your forehead. But you hardly notice. Your focus is fixed on the uneasy calm stretched between the river's dark surface and the temple's shadowed pillars. A faint breeze picks up, teasing the trailing edges of your garment and carrying with it the sharp scent of dry earth and distant smoke, a fragile comfort against the pressing dread. Your fingers itch, desperate to touch the cool stone carvings, to trace the jagged scales of the crocodile that guards the altar. You lean closer, feeling the uneven ridges beneath your fingertips, worn smooth in places by centuries of reverence and fear. Each scale holds a silent history, a whispered warning pressed hard into solid rock. The rough texture grounds you, a reminder that the ritual is your lifeline, even as the air thickens with the threat of what waits unseen beneath the glassy water. You kneel once more, the rough fabric of your garment scraping softly against the temple's stone floor. Your breath slows to a steady rhythm as your hands hover over the offerings. Dry bundles of herbs, broken pottery shards, the faded remnants of prayers carved in silence. With deliberate care, you lower the bundles into the thick river mud, feeling the cool, clinging weight of the water as it accepts your gift. The herbs drift slowly, tendrils curling and unfurling in hesitant currents, disturbing faint clouds of ancient sediment. The distant chants creep back softly through the temple air, a thread of sound weaving through the stillness. They are a fragile tether, holding back the dark. You let your fingers trace gentle, circular motions over the bronze statues, the worn metal cool and pitted beneath your touch. The rhythmic repetition eases the tightening coil within your chest, each slow motion a fragile balm against the gathering tension. Outside, the shadows dance lightly on weathered stone, vines shifting in the growing breeze. Somewhere far above, a bird's cry slices the silence, sharp and fleeting as a flicker of pale light. The quiet pulls your gaze to the river, where faint ripples quiver, teasing the fragile surface with the promise of deeper, ancient currents lurking just out of sight. You rise slowly, muscles taut beneath your linen robes, each step measured to avoid the sharp edges of broken pottery scattered near your sandals. The air grows still again, as if the world holds its breath, waiting with you. Your palm presses against a cool stone pillar, the roughness grounding you in place, even as the invisible eyes from beneath the water's sheen pull at your awareness. A flicker of movement rouses a spark of alertness, subtle, deliberate, too exact to be mere trickery of light or wind. Your heart thuds in slow, steady pulses as the river sheds a new ripple, breaking the surface with quiet insistence. You step closer to the water, breath shallow but steady, straining to pierce the veiled depths. The scent of mud grows stronger, musk mingling with the crisp tang of wet papyrus. The river's surface breaks again, and a figure emerges slowly, deliberately, a hulking shadow that moves with ancient patience, heavy and inexorable. Your breath catches in your throat. The sun's rays pool around you, golden and warm, but beneath that light, the dark gaze meets yours once more, watchful, unblinking, waiting for what you cannot yet name. You hold your ground, the silent tension wrapping tight as the figure rises higher from the water's edge, a monstrous shape carved by time and ritual, the living spirit of the river refusing to be ignored any longer. Your pulse hammers hollow against ribs pulled tight with raw anticipation. Every fiber of your being feels the chill of all that lies beneath, the slow, unknowable power stirring just beyond reach. Then, just as the river's ancient breath seems poised to shatter the stillness, a sharp crack echoes through the air, distant but unmistakable. The brittle sound splinters the calm, rippling through the humid morning like a jagged blade. Your eyes dart toward the temple pathway, where shadows shift and coil beneath the encroaching light. The moment snaps taut. The river's pull tightens like a noose around. Your skin, the dark, patient gaze fixes upon you, its silent demand clear as the slow swell of water lapping against stone. You stand caught between two worlds, the sacred duty that holds you here, and the ancient presence that rises, waiting to write the next chapter upon the river's endless canvas. You step back from the river's edge, feeling the uneven stone sink softly beneath your feet. The cool roughness anchors you as the sun climbs higher, pulling warmth into your bones, a gentle counterpoint to the river's patient chill. Your breath settles into a slow, steady rhythm, matching the quiet pulse of the water, calm on the surface, but restless beneath. The herbs still float, limp and fading, tracing delicate patterns as they drift away, swallowed gradually by the mud. Shadows stretch long around the temple pillars, their creeping vines swaying just enough to stir faint whispers, as though the stone itself murmurs secrets carried on the breeze. You move deliberately, ankles brushing damp earth, sandals whispering over scattered leaves that crackle dry in the growing light. The mingled scents of crushed reeds and baked mud rise again, thick and familiar, weaving into the fabric that brushes your skin. Every inhale pulls you deeper into the river's world, where reverence and dread hold hands in silence. Your fingers twitch involuntarily, reaching toward the nearest bronze statue. The metal shivers cold beneath your skin, its ridges worn soft by hands long vanished. Each tiny imperfection tells a muted story, the slow erosion of time and ritual. You trace the scales once more, each one a smooth hill curled with quiet power before your touch drifts to the sharp angles of the crocodile's jaw. It feels solid, weighty, a reminder carved in stone of promises made beneath uncertain skies. A sudden flutter, a leaf disturbed by a quiet wind, catches your eye. Outside the temple, a distant bird calls softly, its song hardly breaking the silence, yet threading through the stillness like a fragile pulse. Somewhere far below the river's glassy veneer, shadows shift, slow and patient. The faintest stir rings at the edge of your senses, as if the water itself listens alongside you, holding its breath for what must come. You kneel at the altar, rough stone biting gently into your knees. Your hands hover momentarily over the offerings, the aromatic herbs clinging faintly to your fingers, the broken pottery shards cold and jagged beneath the thin fabric. You dip your hands again into the river's viscous embrace, slow circles, deliberate, tracing an ancient rhythm. The liquid clings, cold as a whispered warning, each motion stretching time thin, bending it until every second feels fragile and full of unspoken meaning. Beyond the door, the faint murmur of chanting rises anew, low and steady, weaving through the space like a distant spell. It threads through your thoughts, a fragile lifeline anchoring calm against the shadow's slow crawl. You close your eyes briefly and feel the rhythm of your breath slow, muscles unwinding just enough to catch a fleeting moment of peace beneath the weight. But still the quiet presses, the river's gaze lingers, silent, unblinking, drawing you outward toward shadows that gather gently but deliberately. Each step toward the threshold is careful, measured, your sandals soft, scraping against worn stone, a subtle echo in thick air. The vines curve around pillars like fingers softly closing, and the warmth of sunlight pools in dappled patches. Heavy gold, resting against ancient ochres and faded blues. Outside again, the river hums beneath the haze of light, its surface broken now by a lone, rising bubble. The sight draws you forward, heart pacing slow and steady, senses sharpening with cautious intent. A deep pulse stirs beneath your skin, a current unseen, yet deeply felt. Your fingertips graze the cool bark of a date palm as you walk, sticky resin marking a subtle trace against your skin. The air is thick, laden with the musk of wet earth, salt, and the faint bitterness of crushed herbs left to dry. Ahead, the scattered remnants of offerings wait like silent witnesses, small piles of earth and twisted wood, fragments of old prayers crushed under time. You step closer, the ground soft and yielding beneath weathered sandals. The mud sucks quietly at your feet, reluctant to release its hold, a slow, subtle resistance that matches your own tightening chest. The river holds more than water and ritual here. It breathes stories carried beneath surface calm, threatening in a way that presses heavily against the skin. Your gaze shifts to the faint outline rippling beneath the water's surface, a movement too purposeful to be chance. Shadows lengthen with the setting sun, stretching along the riverbank like fingers poised to grasp. The heavy, humid air folds around you, thick with the scent of the river and the bitter bite of impending twilight. Your fingers tighten around a shard of pottery, the rough edge whispering solidity and fragility all at once. The subtle ripple repeats, slow, deliberate, disturbing the mirror-like gloss that held the morning's reflection just moments before. You hold your breath, waiting, senses straining to catch what world hides beneath stillness. The distant chant fades as the thick evening folds closer, a silent drape that draws a final curtain over the day's last light. Then, from the shadowed water, a shape breaks the surface, massive, dark, and slow-moving. The figure emerges with ancient grace, scales catching what little light the fading sun offers, eyes locked onto you with a patient, unyielding stare that presses deep into your bones. Your breath falters. Time narrows to a razor's edge between the sacred and the dangerous. A sharp crack fractures the quiet. A sunrise's final breath split by the distant breaking of dry branches. Somewhere within the temple grounds, the stillness shatters. Your heart pulses in urgent code beneath ribs pulled tight by anticipation. The figure's gaze never wavers. It waits, measured and unblinking, carrying the weight of centuries in its silent demand. You find yourself caught between the enduring ritual that has defined you and the cold reckoning drawing slowly from the river's depths, a presence that has finally chosen to surface and claim the moment as its own. You step back from the river's edge, the cool stone biting gently into your bare feet beneath thin sandals. The weight of the water's dark gaze still settles deep in your chest, heavy as the thick mud clinging stubbornly around the basin. The sunlight climbs higher, washing golden warmth over cracked pottery and weathered temple stones. But beneath the glow, the river's quiet pulse hums, a reminder of unseen currents laced with relentless patience. The scent of crushed reeds rises again, blending with the earthy tang of Nile mud, a mixture both familiar and unsettling against the slow rustle of ancient vines. Your fingers brush once more against the carved crocodile. Its jagged scales press rough and cold beneath your skin, worn uneven by centuries of worship and wary hands. You trace the ridges gently, each touch tethering you to the ritual that balances devotion with an ever-present dread. The stone feels alive somehow, steady and unyielding, like the very breath of the river frozen in stillness. Your breath deepens slowly, matching the deliberate rhythm of your hands as your fingers circle the familiar contours, each repetition a quiet mantra against the thickening tension. A soft whisper of movement ripples through the air, subtle enough to be dismissed as a playing breeze, yet your senses stiffen instinctively. Somewhere beyond the temple's threshold, the chanting stirs faintly, weaving a thin thread of continuity through the uneasy stillness. The heavy warmth clings to your skin, sticky now with slow perspiration, pressing in as if to compress your awareness, tighten the spaces between your thoughts. You kneel slowly again, knees settling onto rough stone that scratches gently through your linen robes. The offerings wait, fragments of broken pottery stained with time, bundles of withered herbs steeped in the scent of earth and smoke. Your hands hover briefly before dipping into the viscous river mud, the cool embrace pulling you into the moment. Your fingers move with painstaking care, circling, stirring, coaxing the herbs to unfurl the water, thick and reluctant as it drips through your hands. Each motion stretches, elongated by careful steadiness, transforming seconds into an endless meditation on the fragility of this boundary between reverence and survival. Your gaze drifts upward, tracing the weather-worn pillars of the temple as a sliver of sunlight catches a loose vine, making its swollen tendrils glisten faintly. The distant calls of birds punctuate the stillness, sharp and clear, brief interruptions to the low murmur of the river just beyond sight. The statues loom silently on their pedestals, bronze cool against the lingering warmth, their faces marked by patinas of flood and ash. Their solemn stillness feels almost watchful in this stretched moment, as if time itself bends here, folding endless vigilance into each worn line and ripple of metal. A soft scrape on stone pulls your attention back with sudden insistence, the faintest noise against the smooth floor near your sandals. You freeze, heart tightening like the draw of a slow knot. Somewhere just beyond, The shadowed entrance shifts ever so slightly. A faint tremor in what had been carefully held still. The heavy thickness of the air seems to throb with quiet expectancy, waiting for the moment to break, for the first step beyond stillness. You rise slowly, muscles taut beneath your robes, every movement deliberate and measured. Your feet press into the cool roughness of the temple stones, grounding you, even as the uncertainty coils tighter in your belly. The murmur of chants floats back, distant but persistent, threading through the warmth like a fragile pulse that holds the early morning breath in place. The river beckons. Again, its surface glassy but restless, disturbed now by a single slow bubble rising with soft insistence. You lock your gaze on the water, tracing the faint change in its mirror-like calm. The scents of stale earth and crushed herbs swirl thickly, underscored by the unyielding hint of salt from the distant river's flow. Beneath the delicate surface, shadows twist and twine like ancient tendrils, their slow, gentle movement suggesting presence rather than threat. Your fingers twitch toward a nearby stone pillar, rough and cool beneath your skin, each ridge a silent reminder of endurance and caution. You press your palm against it, letting the texture root your awareness as a faint shift in the air pulls your gaze back to the water. A dark shape stirs slowly, breaking the delicate surface with grave deliberation, its scales shimmering faintly in the growing light. The figure rises with a patient weight, slow and inexorable as time itself. Its gaze is unblinking, heavy and deep, locking with yours beneath the thick, humid air. Your breath catches in your throat, chest tightening, not from surprise, but from a quiet recognition of the river's long-forgotten truth surfacing once more. The sun spills over the temple's edges, casting long shadows that stretch like trembling fingers across the cracked stone floor. Warmth pools softly on your skin, a fragile comfort against the cold inevitability reflected in the creature's eyes. Behind you, the singing chants fade into silence again, swallowed by the river's own distant murmur, wrapping the moment in a cloak of patient watchfulness. A sharp crack splits the air, distant, brittle, a sudden fracture that slices through the thick morning stillness. Your gaze darts instinctively toward the temple path, where light and shadow twist and fold among creeping vines and fallen leaves. Muscles coil tight as the fractured quiet echoes faintly across the temple grounds. The presence before you remains still, its dark, patient eyes never wavering. You stand between the pull of sacred duty and the relentless call of the river's ancient depths, held captive by a gaze that promises stories yet untold, waiting in the silent surrender between water and stone. And then, beneath the surface, something shifts again, subtle, slow, a movement threading through the river's heavy calm, pulling at the fragile boundary until it begins to give way. You stand there, still as the river's edge, the cool weight of the ancient gaze settling deep into your bones. The dark figure beneath the surface has receded, slipping back into the murky depths from which it came, leaving only ripples that slowly fade into the silent calm. For a long moment, the world holds its breath alongside you, as if the river itself is waiting for what comes next, and then gradually it exhales. The heavy tension that clung to the air loosens, unraveling like morning mist under the sun's gentle touch. You draw a slow breath, tasting the familiar mix of mud, crushed reeds, and salt, the breath of the Nile that has whispered stories for centuries. Your bare feet press firmly into the rough stone, grounding you to this ancient place where fear and faith have danced hand in hand for generations. With careful hands, you turn back to the altar, where the remnants of the offerings float quietly, entangled in soft currents only the river can feel. The brittle herbs have unfurled their last gifts, the broken pottery fragments resting, silent witnesses to the ritual's fragile power. You trace the ridged scales of a bronze crocodile, feeling the cold metal smooth beneath your fingertips, an anchor to tradition in a moment of uncertain clarity. Outside, the temple breathes again. The vines twist lazily around the worn pillars, their leaves catching the sunlight in whispered shimmers. Somewhere, a bird calls, a clear, tentative note that threads through the thick air like a fragile promise. For the first time, in what seems like ages, the distant chants drift back, unbroken, a steady pulse weaving calm into the stillness. You kneel, letting the rough stone embrace your knees, the fabric of your robe brushing softly with a familiar rustle. Your hands rise and fall in slow, reverent circles over the river's essence, each motion a quiet prayer, a tether to continuity in the face of the unknown. The cold liquid drips from your fingers, each droplet a memory, each ripple a silent hymn. The shadows that danced along the temple walls stretch and stretch, growing long and thin in the golden afternoon light. The air warms further, carrying with it the gentle rustle of leaves and the delicate scent of drying herbs. There is a softness now, an ease in the weight of the stillness that presses against your skin, no longer sharp, but comforting. Your heartbeat slows, falling into line with the slow rhythm of the river flowing just beyond the temple's threshold. The river's hidden watchers have retreated beneath the surface, their patience unbroken, leaving only a quiet respect in their wake. You sense that some encounters are not things to conquer, but moments to endure, to witness. The ritual, the waiting, the reverence, they weave together, a thread of life flowing steady beneath all uncertainty. Rising slowly, each step measured and deliberate, you feel the rough texture of the temple floor beneath your sandals, reminding you that this place, old as time, holds more than stones and statues. It holds the pulse of devotion and fear, a fragile balance kept alive through countless dawns and dusks. As you walk toward the temple door, a soft breeze stirs, carrying the scent of earth and sunlight, wrapping around your shoulders like an old, familiar shawl. The air feels lighter here, as if a quiet understanding has settled, tucked into the folds of every vine and carved symbol. Beyond the door, light spills freely now, warm and steady, washing over the carved crocodiles and worn steps, gilding each edge with the promise of continuation, a cycle unbroken by fear, held steady by faith. The river's voice returns in a gentle murmur, a soft lullaby that hums beneath the world's surface, carrying stories that only those who listen closely can hear. You pause a moment at the threshold, catching one last glimpse of the river's mirrored face. The surface is smooth again, reflecting pale clouds drifting lazily in the sky. The promise of mystery remains, deep, patient, eternal. But here, in this moment, peace unfurls quietly, like the slow bloom of dawn. Stepping out fully, you leave behind the chamber and its shadows, carrying with you the weight of what has passed and the calm certainty that the river moves on, as you must. The temple stands silent, steadfast, a guardian of secrets and stories, a resting place for weary souls bound by ritual and the river's endless song. And now, as the sun climbs higher and the day stretches forward, you move gently through the light, the lingering scent of mud and herbs brushing softly against your skin. Each breath is steady, each step a part of the age-old rhythm connecting past with present. The story settles, folding around you like a soft blanket. The river's ancient embrace lingers unseen, a silent companion as the world turns quietly toward evening. In this unfolding calm, you find rest, deep, slow, and sure. The dawn awaits its next whisper, and you, for now, can simply be.